Welcome to the 3 layers of transformation part 2. You do not want to miss this video. But before you watch this video, if you are just coming in for the first time and you're seeing this video, I don't want you to watch this video right away. I'm going to put the first video somewhere. You're going to see it pop up. I want you to click the link. You're going to get a foundation of the 3 layers of transformation, because in this video, I'm going to the second layer. So you want to watch that first video so that you can understand what the first layer is all about and what the premise is for these 3 layers. Now, for those of you who've watched that video, welcome back. And we are going to dive into the second layer of transformation. Okay, this is the relationship layer. Now, as you know in the story in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, God told Abraham, what did he say? He said to leave or get out of your country. That's the first layer. Get from your kindred. That is the second layer. And from your father's house. That is the third layer. And so we're going to dive into the kindred part of this. So let me make sure there's an understanding here, because I've read this a million times. I read this story. You know this story. A lot of times you've heard many preachers and teachers and whoever else and pastors touch on this story. But I'm sure you've never, well, I shouldn't say never, but I've never heard of anybody break down those 3 layers before. It's always from leaving from a physical place to go to another. But we don't really take in the blueprint that God was giving Abraham in order to transform. Right. And so that's why it's important to go watch the first video, because we break down that it's not just about Abraham being a person, and it's not just about Abraham being leaving a geographical location. This is a spiritual, a spiritual pattern of transformation that every being, every soul should go on in order for you to become Abraham in your story, in your life, right? What you've contracted to come into this world to be and to do. You're becoming that source of purpose for whatever you came here to be and do, right? It's kind of like a tree, right? We are all meant to be trees, because you see in the Bible, right? I believe it was Jesus that said it in John. I think it's John chapter 15, somewhere around there, where it says that the Father is looking for those who are bearing fruit, right? And then we go into a process to be pruned, to bear more fruit. What is the purpose of bearing fruit, right? Because think of a tree. I know I'm going to get to the relationship thing in a moment, but I want to share this, right? Think about a tree, right? The purpose of the tree is to have the fruit so that the generation and the longevity of that tree can continue, right? Because when you have fruit, guess what you have? You have more seed. You can plant more, right? That tree begins to expand, right? So if I have a purpose, if I have a destiny to become this tree, whatever my destiny is, whatever I'm meant to be and to do, it's so that the next generations, the next generations can continue on, right? And we can go to a higher level and we can ascend to higher levels. That's the whole point of us taking the ideals that we are given. Like, look what happened with Joseph, right? Look what happened with Joseph and his relationships, right? His relationships caused him on a journey to go on a journey into the pit, to Potiphar's house, into the prison, and into the palace. For what purpose? He was growing and developing to the point where he became the tree. And what did he end up doing? He ended up saving his family. He ended up saving all of Egypt. He ended up saving everybody all around. Can you imagine if the purpose within Joseph, right? And can you imagine if he allowed his relationships and the connections that he had ruin him from getting to the palace, right? There could have been catastrophe, right? So his purpose was so important. But all that he went through with his relationship with his brothers, the relationship with Potiphar and Potiphar's wife, even in the prison, all his relationships, right? He understood, right? Look at Potiphar's wife. Whoa, listen, right? But he's like, nah, bro. And I'm assuming that she was a dime piece. You feel what I'm saying? Like sweet tea. You know what I mean? Right? But he's like, nah, my purpose is bigger than the nana. You feel me? Right? But the point I'm making with the Joseph story is he didn't allow his environment, he didn't allow his relationships to deter him or to distract him from his purpose. You understand what I'm saying? And so when God told Abraham to leave not only your country, your environment, but leave your relationships, he's not just talking about physically leaving people. Okay? He's talking about let me show you. Let me show you. I want to make sure you got your understanding here. Right? So let me show you here. Right? So and this is why I wanted to slow down a little bit, because God told Abraham to leave his kindred. Now, why would God do that? Now, why would God say to leave the kindred? And like I said, it wasn't about distance. It wasn't about being disrespectful. It was all about alignment. Right? God saw what the relationships around him, God saw what the relationships around him could not see. The next level. So in order for Abraham to get to the next level of his life, he had to leave his relationships. Right? He had to leave. And I think this is the hardest part of the journey. One of the hardest part of the journey. Because it's easy to leave an environment. It is very easy to leave an environment. It is very easy to leave a job, leave a city. But it's not easy to leave the effects of the relationships that you've had over time in your life. Right? Because relationships shape destiny. Relationships, write this down, relationships shape destiny. Now, why does this occur? This is because the people around you, they influence you. So they influence your thoughts, they influence your emotions, they influence your decisions, they influence your beliefs, they influence your direction. So it makes sense for God to say to Abraham, leave your kindred, leave the connections that were shaping all these things, your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, your direction, because what I have in store for you, you can't get to the next level until you let go of certain relationships. And see, what I want you to understand is it's not about hating people. It's not about dishonoring people. It is about being in alignment. Being in alignment, right? And going back to the Joseph story, Joseph just keeps hitting me. I know I'm talking about Abraham, but I keep feeling a Joseph spirit coming on, right? And this is why Joseph is such a powerful story. It's because he tapped within himself. He tapped within himself to find out who he was. He had two dreams. He got excited. He told his people the relationships. What did they do? They wanted to destroy him, right? But they didn't know that in the midst of trying to destroy him, they actually were shaping his destiny. They're actually pushing him towards the person that he was meant to be, right? Sometimes your bad relationships or the relationships that are causing tension and conflict are the very relationships that are necessary for you to be pushed into the next level, for you to be pushed into your Abraham, right? Being pushed to who you're meant to be. Right? And so Joseph, I know, trust me, I had a whole thing with Abraham, but I'm just flowing. I'm flowing. Joseph, the dreamer. We see, we got to make sure that our purpose is greater than everything that we experience in our life. And sometimes that means that our relationships have to go. Certain relationships have to go, or certain boundaries have to be placed in our relationships so that they stay in alignment with who we are becoming. You see? Joseph. Wow. Okay. Let's move on a little bit. And so I noticed that kindred is deeper than family. Right now, so I want you to take this in, because as for the longest time, when you see the word kindred, some of your Bibles probably say family, and that even of itself is a whole nother conversation, right? Being able to let go of certain ties that you have with your blood family, and I'm not saying to dishonor them and be disrespectful and do all that kind of stuff, but I understand why Jesus said what he said, right? Do you remember when Jesus? They asked him, "Hey, your family's looking for you," right? His blood family, or that's another conversation. But his mother, his brothers, his sisters, hey man, they're trying to hook up with you and trying to talk to you. What did he say? Who's my mother? Who's my brother? Who's my sister? Right? Except for the people who are in the will. So even Yahushua's, or Jesus, his whole mission was to be around the people that were in alignment with his mission. The relationships, the time that he spent was with the people that were in most alignment with his purpose, right? It's not that he hated his mother, his brother, or his sisters and all that, but there were boundaries that had to be set in order for him to become the Christ. He became the Christ. He went on the journey to tap into the Christ consciousness, Christ energy, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, okay? He tapped into the Christ. It wasn't his last name. He became it. He became the foundation to connect to source. He became the foundation to bring unity and equilibrium and balance in his time. You understand what I'm saying, right? That's why he said the labor, the harvest is ripe, is ready to go, but the laborers are few. So he went to his people. He went to his kindred, those who were in alignment. Right? You see, sometimes kindred, people who were our day ones, people who are blood family. See, my mind is going. There's a saying, I don't know if you knew this saying, and I'm going to say it. You know how they say blood is thicker than water? Now, I found out that that's not the real saying, right? Because when we use the term blood is thicker than water, we're thinking that that term means that blood as in your family is thicker than water, meaning any other type of relationship. But that's not what the real saying is. It is the blood of the covenant is greater than the water of the womb. You hear what I just said? The blood of the covenant is greater than the water of the womb. So oftentimes your real kindred, your real family, your real peoples oftentimes are not the ones that are in your bloodline sometimes. Sometimes it's the people who are your aligned soul connections, if you will, right? And so Jesus, right? Although he was born into a family, born into a certain culture, he had to leave the environment. He had to leave the same pattern. He had to leave the environment. He had to leave the kindred, separate from family, separate from certain relationships so that he can become the version of himself, the Abraham, so that he can come and be a source, be a foundation for people to go on their journey back to source and to connect back to God. That's why he got killed. That's why he was a problem, because he was allowing people to understand their alignment is already within them. And he is the example of what it looks like to be in alignment. But he went on the same journey that Abraham went on. He left the environment. Yes, I know the Bible doesn't tell you that he left the environment, but listen, I don't just read the Bible. I look at other stuff that are out there that some people may not think is true, but I believe is true. The type of things that he did, and the type of, if you understand the esoteric and the deep metaphysical stuff and all those things, you will see that there was more to the story than what even the Bible is telling you. He had to leave. That's why there's a huge gap between him being 12 years old and 30 years old, because he left the environment. He was like Abraham. He left, went on the journey, came back a new person, came back as the Christ to bring equilibrium and unity and awakening to the people. So that they can begin to recognize their alignment with source, alignment with God, alignment with their purpose, alignment with themselves, understanding who they really are, and understanding that the kingdom was always within them. So these are the patterns. You see these patterns in the Bible, right? In order to elevate, in order to go to the next level, in order to ascend, you have to leave your environment, and you have to leave certain kindred relationships that are keeping you bound from becoming the Abraham in your story. Woo! Come on now, people. Let's go. Right? So the kindred is deeper than family. Kindred represents familiar people, familiar energies, familiar bonds, familiar patterns, familiar expectations. Okay? So some relationships support a version of you. So in other words, some people were assigned to a season. Some people were supporting a certain stage of your growth. Some relationships help build who you were. And that's okay. But that doesn't mean that those relationships that supported those versions of you can carry who you're becoming. And that's the come on. See, and this is the problem. A lot of us are being held bound by the people that have helped build other versions of us. And oftentimes, and I think this is wrong. I think it's wrong to force people to honor you because you've done something for them, or make people feel bad because if you didn't help them, they would not even become who they are now, or going on the journey of who they becoming now. Do you know how manipulative that is? To say, oh, for all I've done for you, you should be this, or you should be thanking me. But we did thank you. We did say thank you. We did honor you in those seasons. But you were for that season. Those relationships were for that season to help groom you in that season. But not every relationship is meant to now go and move forward. And that's, oh, you've changed. Yes, I've changed. Oh, you're not the same. Yes, I'm not the same person. I shouldn't be. You know what I'm saying? And this is why a lot of people get stuck in relationships, because they feel that, oh, right? And because those relationships help them to get to a certain level. And so all those thoughts and emotions and decisions are all based off of those old seasons, or those old relationships. Or it could be current relationships, but they're holding on to the things that happened. And it's difficult for them to move forward. But you got to move forward. You have to leave those internal issues in your relationships, or your past relationships, or current relationships that are preventing you from becoming yourself. You see, and I want to say this. I'm not saying, I want you to see this, that God wasn't asking Abraham to hate people. So in everything I'm saying, I'm not saying to just abandon people and to leave people, right? God was asking, watch this, watch what it says here. God was asking Abraham to release what could no longer support his transformation. That is the difference. That is the difference that I'm communicating. You have to let go. Not just physically let go of people, but emotionally let go. Energetically, thought-wise, your mind, psychologically, let go. Right? Because you can leave a place, you can leave a relationship, but the relationship is still in you. And so essentially what God was telling Abraham, from what I look at when I look at the insight, when I look deep into this, let go of the relationships internally that is no longer supporting your growth. So those day ones, those people you call day ones, they may not be day two, right? Day one is not going to be day one forever. You should be evolving to day 2 and 3 and 4 and et cetera, et cetera. And I understand the day one term. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand the day term, but I'm using it to make a point that they could be your day ones, but yeah, they're your day ones based off of that version of you from day one. But you're now becoming a new person. You're changing, right? It's even scientifically proven that your physical body isn't even the same after a certain amount of years. I think it's 7 years or something like that. Even your physical body isn't the same. Your cells change and they become new and they develop. You're not even the same person. So why are you the same person psychologically or emotionally, or when it comes to you becoming the version, the best version of yourself? You should be changing too. Right? So God was telling Abraham to let go, to release what no longer supports his transformation. And I want you to see this. You see this right here. It says, watch this. Release and hatred are not the same thing. Honor and attachment are not the same thing. See, let me see, release and hate are not the same thing. And oftentimes, a lot of people will catch feelings when you release them from your life, when they no longer have a hold on you, right? They'll think, oh, you changed, you're different, you're not the same. Oh, we used to be partners, we used to be brethren, we used to be, you know what I mean? But you got to let go. And it doesn't mean you hate people. And it's okay to let go of relationships, regardless of the reactions they may give you. Because there's a question that I want you to consider, okay? And the question is this. What is worse? And what is worse? Leaving, I want you to listen to the question, leaving the wrong relationship or staying in the wrong relationship? Which one is worse? Right? Because leaving the wrong relationship does cost you. And it's probably an immediate cost because of the backlash you might receive. Right? See, I was part of a church, a ministry at the time. And I was a youth minister at the time. I was in music ministry, very involved in the church. And it came a time where God was revealing to me that it was time to release myself from that environment, release myself from that relationship, right? Especially when the relationship was helping, the environment was helping to a degree, but in hindsight, when I really was outside looking in, it was a very toxic relationship that I had with the pastor. I was very close, right? And I had to release. I had to let go. I had to be like Abraham and leave the environment, right? But leaving that relationship, leaving that environment cost me, right? The backlash. I would even say there was a slight persecution, if you will, to a degree. Because when see, and this is the thing about relationships, right? We all have images of how we see ourselves. We all have images of how we see each other. We all have images of how we see our relationship dynamics, what the vision that we see for our relationships. So when someone comes to you and says something of them changing or whatever the degree is, and it doesn't line up with your vision of what you thought the relationship was, that's where the tension and the backlash can lie, because you are not seeing the same thing. And that's what happened, right? Me releasing myself from that environment, releasing myself from that relationship caused a lot of issues. But what is worse, right? If I stayed in that environment, if I stayed in that wrong relationship, I would not be on this mic right now talking to you. This channel would not exist, because it would have no longer supported my journey, and I would have felt obligated to remain there and to obligate to honor someone because they helped you in a season of your life. Grateful. I took a lot from that season, but I had to be like Abraham and let go. And I'm telling you this story. I've lived this story. I've lived the story of Abraham in my own life multiple times. Had to leave environments and relationships when I saw that I was going into a new season. It happened every single time. I had to separate to some degree with relationships and environments. And it wasn't easy. Sorry about that. My thing cut out. So yeah, like I was saying, it wasn't easy to let go of certain relationships and do certain things. And so here's what I want you to understand, and with this relationship layer, okay? And I've said it multiple times, that we need to take an inventory of the relationships around us. And even in this season of my life, I'm looking, because you don't want to just abandon, like I said, you don't want to just abandon people and just throw people away like that. But at the same time, you're like Joseph, your purpose is everything. Purpose over everything. Purpose, purpose over everything. We came here to be, we came here to do. We came here to take the dreams and the visions that are within us and to learn how to become what we see. Joseph saw his dreams. He understood his dreams. And no matter what he went through, no matter the relationships he went through, it did not stop him. He kept his faith and knowing that he was there for a purpose. You saw it clearly when he was at Potiphar's house, when his wife wanted to do her thing, you feel me? And even when he was wrongly accused and went in prison, that prison was also a setup, right? Him being in that cycle, in that loop, I'll talk about the prison and the loop of what prison means maybe in later videos. But there's a reason why I'm mentioning that a prison is a loop, a cycle where you're just constantly going, right? Because sometimes prisons are not necessarily just because you're in pain that's preventing you from moving forward and fulfilling your purpose. Sometimes you're just in a certain cycle in the environment, right? Your environment is a certain culture, certain surroundings, certain system,